Okay, so the point is that this is all about psychology, right? Even going back to Job's time. And so was Yahweh was presenting himself to Job either in visions, dreams, or whirlwinds, right? And those were visions. To the extent that he was seeing an entity in the whirlwind, um, that was a vision. And so it was Job's psychology at work, which got written down. And and basically, I think what the leaders, I don't know if they were intentionally trying to do it, but when they wrote it into the Bible, the idea, I think, if I get it right, is that if you're faithful, then all things will come to you, no matter how bad things get. Okay, God will finally deliver for you, which He did for Job. Okay, basically told Job, well, yeah, I killed all your kids, but you can have more. Yeah, I killed your.
It didn't sit right with me, like their replacement, like okay, like a new car to replace your old one.
Yeah, I mean,
couple empty slots there.
No
So-
attachment to those individuals.
So, I mean, that sort of worked. That sort of worked for 500 years. I mean, apparently people sort of accepted that idea during the period from 500 years BC when the story of Job was written up until the time of Christ. But then somehow, out of the unconscious of the writers of the Bible, they realized that there had to be an atonement, and that was a time when there was atonement by sacrifice and things like that. And so, fortunately, Abraham was one transformation of the God image, which was back 1,200 years before Christ, right? Approximate date 1,200 BC, where Abraham is told to go sacrifice Isaac, and he has a vision that says, the goat is enough, and so he doesn't sacrifice Isaac. He sacrifices a goat to this God image, and so that was the end of human sacrifice in the form of taking your kid up on the mountain and cutting his throat type sacrifice. I mean that was pretty gruesome, but so
like you think you've suffered so far.
yeah, you think you're suffering. Have you? And human beings were doing that all over the world. They were sacrificing human sacrifice.
Well, down in South America, up
Yeah.
until, 600 years ago or something.
Yeah, I mean that recently, but in the Jewish tradition, it ended about 1200 BC when Abraham said, "Oh, we can do goats instead of our sons." Okay, so then Job's story comes along. It's cooked up. It comes out of the psyche of somebody who visions it or has enough presence of mind to write all that stuff down, and so that person basically says, if you're faithful enough to God, ultimately God will come through to you, for you. I mean, that's sort of the story, but that wasn't quite good enough, and so God had to become man and experience the suffering of man in order to atone with the people so that the people could accept God. And so that's what Jesus was God becoming man. And what Jung says is that Christ never doubted his role as the Son of God. There's only one evidence that he did. And do you know what it is?
I think I read that when he was on the cross saying, "Why hast thou
Yeah.
deserted me?" Yeah.
Right. My Father, why have you forsaken me? Which proves that he was actually a man and not a god, because up to in everything else that he said, he was basically saying he was the Son of God. And so that proved both his divinity and his humanity. Okay. And apparently that's why he is everlasting, and why a quarter of the human race follows him to this day. And God became an all-good God, okay, which was a problem. All right, but we won't get to that yet. Okay, but as Jung points out, there was the opposites, and the devil, and it's actually dual. It's a dually theistic God, not a monotheistic God, right? Because we got Satan, and since God is the God of everything, Satan is the son, right? And so Satan is part of God, and he's the shadow of God.
Is he seeing Satan as a chaotic, a symbol of chaos, or more of a symbol of moral, a moral reversal or something?
Jung or the church
Jung.
fathers?
Jung.
I think Jung is saying that Satan was a representative of chaos, yeah,
Okay.
and that, you know,
Because he attributes chaotic events in his life to the God image, God's presence.
right.
So it gets confusing.
That's right.
Right. Okay. And so anyway, the reason that the Paraclete couldn't come until Christ was gone was because otherwise everybody is looking to him as God. And what Christ wanted and said is, you are gods. Okay? You are going to change the world. Okay? And so if it was him, then everybody would be praying to him. But if he was gone, then the Holy Ghost could be born in everybody. That's
And what do you need faith for? Or the church?
you don't need it. You don't need it. That's right. You don't need it. And as Edinger says in his lectures, you don't need a creed. You know, if you have an experience, if you have this experience of the greater personality, which we have been discussing, the greater personality equals God, equals the God image, equals other things. The self, all those things are equivalencies within the psyche, but nobody figured it out until Jung did.
Well, and he also says that basically extroverts can't get there.
Well, okay, I beg your pardon?
He also states that extroverts basically can't get there. So they may need that structure.
Yeah, I want to come back to that. I don't.
Well, it also.
Didn't he say that?
He also said that Americans are all extroverts.
That's the key. But I don't think anyone's purely extrovert or introvert. I mean, if you are, then you're already out of balance and you're probably.
Right.
What are you trying to say though? Are you psychoanalyzing us?
But
Chakras in order. Special cases.
okay, so in any case, in 655,
655, okay.
in paragraph 655, Christ envisions a continuing realization of God in his children, the children of God, right? Now, from the Protestant standpoint, the Bible is the final and authentic communication with God, okay? But the Catholic standpoint, according to Edinger now, that through the Holy Ghost, the dogma can progressively develop and unfold. And Jung's point later in Answer to Job is that the perfect example of that is the Annunciation of Mary bodily into heaven, so that she becomes bodily in the chamber with God and Christ and the Holy Ghost. And and that doesn't happen until 1950.